This video is from April 19, where Mike, Sean, Bob, and I went up to Keyesville near Lake Isabella to do a dirt bike ride all day. And this is the first time I've got my new GoPro camera mounted on my helmet. I got a Hero 7, so it's image stabilized, so no more getting dizzy watching these videos. They're nice and smooth. So we parked the car over by the Keyesville area and took this single track along the flank of the mountain, and ended up with about a half-hour ride over to where we normally park, which is the Jeep Trail. You can see, I think that's Mike in front of me. There's Mike in the yellow, Sean in front with the dark jacket and darker bike, and Bob's got the red Honda to identify which one's which here. This is really a fun trail. This is, I think, the third time I've been on it. I'm starting to get my speed up here and getting my balance, except here's a good lesson in how not to look where you want to go. I looked off to the right and saw that rock, and of course when you look at the rock, you run into the rock instead of looking up that trail to follow Mike up. So still working on my skills there, and but I do have my speed up a little bit just because I've got my head up a little bit more. Since this ride, I bought a real dirt bike helmet, which also helped quite a bit to get the eyesight up and looking, because this trail is a little bit tricky. It drops off pretty rapidly, and it's a bit trickier where it's washed out and very skinny rocks, so you end up having a habit of putting your head down, but the more we can keep it up, the more you can just ride over all these features. You can see the beautiful wildflowers, purple ones here and blue, and lots of different colors. You see also the road below. That's the highway coming up from the Kern River Canyon. So we're just above the road here, and then we take off and veer up into the mountains. Really a fun trail, good for technical skills. A little bit of higher speed riding possible in here. This is sort of moderate for me. I'm still learning to get my speed up a little bit. And here's the Jeep Trail. This is where we normally park by the highway. We're going to cross over the Jeep Trail and continue on this single track, including here where the hairpin turns are good practice. To stand up, just let the bike roll down the hill, keep some momentum, let the bike move underneath you, just keep moving, no feet down, and as you get to the bottom, start to apply power and look up. So first time I rode on this trail, I was scared to death. Now I'm getting my confidence up. It's much better. I also ride faster during the morning hours here and get to more momentum. During the afternoon, we came down a very difficult, gnarly trail. I was overheated, and as we get tired and we get our caution up, your mind starts to overthink this stuff instead of just using instinct. So I was much faster in the morning, and as the day went on, as I got hotter and we started going down the hill, you'll see later in the video, I was quite slow as compared to a reasonable pace up in these single track sections. We've been up this way one more time since this ride with that new helmet, and it made all the difference in the world to have that bigger field of view, a little bit different air flow through the helmet. The dirt bike helmets are much farther forward, so you get much better airflow, and that made a big difference. So this particular day, I've still got my street bike helmet on, which is much hotter and a little more confining. So I'll get the GoPro mounted to the new one. We'll be all set. Little cow crossing the road here. No big deal there. This is all open range, so we had a couple cases where we crossed the barbed wire fence, but no problem. Again, Mike in front of me. This is pretty skinny. Gotta watch, kind of think about where that front tire is, make sure it's planted on the trail, and get the body to stay upright and move the bike underneath. I'm standing up here, but typically I would sit down for probably 3/4 of this. I don't have my stamina good enough where I can ride this standing up. Mike is actually sitting here, but which is what I typically would do. Definitely don't have that strength build up. Now we're getting higher and higher. You can still see the Kern Canyon highway down below in a couple cases. So we're going to end up at the top of the mountain, but really enjoyable ride here. Temperatures are probably in the 70s, 75 as we get up to the top. not too bad. As we come back down the mountain in the afternoon, they got back up into the 80s. Stopped for lunch here at the camp. Here's the bikes. Just had a backpack full of snacks and some protein and lots of water. Making sure we're staying hydrated. Really had no issues with any of the bikes today. I've started to learn how to jump these little whoops. As we come over the little ridge, I now have the suspension set up on the bike where the bike's much stiffer than it was as a street bike, and so the DRZ 400 has got multiple variants. This is the S variant, and I put stiffer springs in the back and the front, and a little bit less oil, less airspace on the oil-filled shocks to give a little bit additional compression on the preload. The bike handles much better now, and since this ride I've also replaced the handlebars. The video doesn't really show it, but I've got here's one of the barbed wire sections. The handlebars are raked back, so I was positioned back on the bike quite a bit, and I had a couple of falls on some soft stuff, and typically they would happen when I was too far back on the bike with my long arms, and I get my center of gravity back too far, and the front tire would not bite in. So you can see, like Mike's bike there, fairly straight bars, but mine were raked back. So I've got that fixed now, and since this ride I've also gone down one more tooth count on the front sprocket to give myself nearly 10% more torque, just a little more low-end grunt, sacrificing some highway speed. So looking forward to taking the bike back out to check those modifications and see how that feels in terms of some of the hill climbs, and the positioning on the bike is the big deal for me. Like on this type of road, going around a curve, I would start to drift back in the seat if I was sitting down, which I am here. You can see that front wheel pop up. That's means I'm sitting down. But around a curve, that does not provide enough bite with my weight back. So even a couple of inches made a big difference as I experimented with that, and Mike and Sean were showing me what that looked like, and encouraged me to try a different field there. A lot of fun on these single tracks. You can see the little increased speed from my first ride. I was just putting through here, but now much faster through the trees, get the body English going, and feel much more confident on the bike. I still had my share of falls here and there, but nothing major. So we had a lot of trees down on this trip. We've been up here 3 times this year, and a lot of trees had fallen with fires and disease. So the maintenance crews had not been fully in here yet, but this particular trail is also a mountain bike trail, so it's in reasonable shape. And trees like that, you can kind of go around, and no big deal. Bob got into some trouble here as he came around this corner and got off on the soft edge of the trail. Bike slid off and just down the fairly steep embankment, so not a big deal. It was kind of up by the edge, but stuck on a tree, so we got that pushed back up. Really pretty amazing. The plastics bend very forgettingly and just pop back, so no problem there. Come back out, and came back out of this tree section into the I think this is called manzanilla, if I got the tree name right. This sort of overgrown brush area where it almost like grows over your head, so a little bit tough for tall guys like me, but really beautiful to drive in somewhat of a tunnel underneath all that brush. Then onto a more of a Jeep or ATV trail. This is a fairly deep crossing, maybe a foot deep, probably the biggest one of the day. This one up to an area where we ended up getting stuck. There's a big set of trees across this trail, and we just ended up turning around and coming back. This is a really fun trail with lots of turns, a little bit of water crossing action, a little bit of mud, stuff like this you got to go underneath, and lots of little whoop sections where you can practice getting the speed and the weight position correct for jumping those whoops on this trail. So that was good practice. So this day would end up being arrival, I would say probably around 9:30 maybe in the morning. So we were riding with brakes until probably 5 or so, or maybe even after. So a pretty long day of riding, and I was getting tired. Bob had found this trials bike trail up on high altitude area, and it was really fun. kind of slow speed, but really good technical training. And now we're up on top of the ridge above Dutch Flats. That's Lake Isabella, and we're just taking a nice long break before we go down this ridiculously steep hill. This does not look that steep in the videos because the camera tends to flatten it out. This is a not too flat, not too steep section, but up ahead you'll see some sections where we literally had to turn the bikes off and use the engine compression to get the bikes down the hill and kind of paddle down because it was so steep. With the brakes, you just can't get enough brake action. So in a couple sections like this, Bob even walked part of it, particularly because that's a fairly tall bike. But pretty rutted out, and I was super tired. It's getting hot, so I'm sweating and getting worn out by this point. So your confidence starts to go down. I could probably just stand up in the morning, just stand up on the bike and just ride down most of this. But I didn't have the confidence with the temperature up and the fatigue. So we just all took it easy. And it took us probably an hour, hour and a half to get down. We're at the top of the mountain and basically end up at the lake level that you saw earlier in that video. Really beautiful scenery in here. The whole day was just beautiful like this. You can see the visibility is fantastic. But pretty tough trail to end the day with. You see a lot of ruts, and the bike wants to fall into those. So if you get in one, you're just better to keep paddling and just ride out of it. Sometimes if you're up on the edge, which I elected to do here, it worked out. But if you're not confident and have a good line and some momentum, then one of the two wheels may end up sliding down into that rut. And as you're sitting down like I am, you probably aren't going to have the balance control to not fall over. So better to stand up. But by this time of the day, we were totally burned out. You can see all of us are generally sitting down. It's so hot and we're so tired. But still fun, and just took us a little bit longer to get down with the steep inclines. Here again, hard on the brakes all the way. This doesn't look too bad, but it's very, very steep here. I started to stand up. I could see my shadow, and then I sat back down. Then you get a little bit better feel there as I come around the corner and seeing Sean going down that hill. So we probably descended probably 2,000 or 3,000 feet at least from the top of that mountain on this trail. Most of it looking something like this, just pretty gnarly. So I'm excited to get back on these kinds of trails or some desert riding now that I've got the bike further tuned. You see I'm standing up to the shadow, see the bike moving underneath me. Much easier to control, so I'm learning, but my stamina isn't quite good enough yet. But looking forward, I got the suspension where I like it. I think I'll have much better torque for some better gear selection on these trails, using second gear more, I think, and when I need first, much more torquey performance. And then the handlebars will be a really big improvement. Very subtle, but it'll pull me forward on the bike about 2 inches from what I can figure, which is huge. Sure do love riding this area. We'll not ride too much in the summer here because it just gets too hot, and we'll wait until the fall time. So back to the truck, and a really fantastic ride up at the Keyesville area.